Good afternoon, everybody. We are coming up on 4 o'clock, and I just want to remind everybody that when you come up to the podium to present your case, please make sure that you sign in on the sign-in sheet and speak into the microphone so that we can hear you. All right? Thank you very much. We'll get started in just a minute.
I'd like to call to order the September 15th, 2022 Town of Somerville Design Review Board meeting. The first order of business is approval of last month's minutes. Is there a motion?
Make motion for approval.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Tim, I assume there's still no signs.
That is correct.
Okay.
Come on, Candy.
Then the first item on the agenda is 1200 North Main Street, the Azul. Anybody from Azul here? Could I entertain a motion for approval or denial for that?
Make a motion, we approve.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item of business is Main Road self-storage. Just make sure you sign in, please, and state your role in the project.
My name is Chip White. I'm with Barrier Island Engineering and Consulting. We're the civil on this. Project's located, if you're going northeast on 165 and you take a left into Paradise Point, just before you get down into the neighborhood there, there'll be a big parcel on the left. I think it's a single family structure that's actually acting as an office building right now. The proposed use as a self-storage facility. And again, this has recently been annexed into the town under general business.
And just quick question, have y'all been here already for conceptual approval?
Yes, they were here in June for conceptual review.
Tim, could you go over the staff comments, please?
Yes, so at the conceptual review board, the board was generally supportive of the 3 parking spaces located in the front yard, which is within the board's authority to approve. So let me just show that. So based on the zoning, parking is prohibited in the front yard, which is the space between the front of the building and the street. These three spaces are up here for the sales office, which is at the front on the first floor. The board, as I said, was supportive of that at conceptual, but will need to provide approval for that here at preliminary or final. The building has a 28,700 square foot footprint and is proposed to be 4 stories tall with an overall height of 51 feet. The proposed layout meets the required buffer depth on all sides, requiring a buffer. The required 8-foot landscape border along the drive aisle to the rear of the property needs to be met. That's on this side up here. And they're showing a 5-foot buffer. Again, that's something that the board has the authority to reduce if they feel the intent of the ordinance is being met. The required landscaping in the border does not have the continuous row or staggered row of evergreen shrubs with a minimum expected height at maturity of 3 feet and should be installed at not more than 6 feet on center. The front landscaping is very light. The 3 crepe myrtles could be replaced with native canopy trees or canopy trees added in supplement to the crepe myrtles to fill out the front landscape. A signage plan has not been submitted. Initial review of the photometric plan shows that it meets the requirements of Chapter 9. The building is proposed to have a metal panel cladding and a brick veneer for the central main entrance. Brick pilasters have been added to the drive aisle facing facade, and the design should be consistent with Chapter 4, Section 4.5 of the UDO. So that's staff comments. Chip is here to present on behalf of the applicant.
All right, do you want to roll through any highlights on the site that you want to talk about or response to the staff comments?
Yeah, in regards to the site, you'll notice, we've got a pretty steep drop off from the property to Plan South. So we are proposing a bit of a retaining wall through there. The first, probably until you get to that back, left corner of the wall will be about 3 to 4 feet. And once you get into that corner, be about 6 to 7 feet. And then, Plan North, we're gonna have another retaining wall there, to make a grading work there. That one will be a smaller retaining wall, probably a foot or 2 high at this point. In terms of stormwater management, that pond probably looks small to y'all, which it is. In that back area right there where you see we've got some perforated under drain, call it out. We're going to utilize some type of pervious pavement there, whether it be pavers, pervious concrete, pervious asphalt. And we'll be designing that to handle the additional stormwater requirements there. In regards to staff comments, I think we were asking for the 5-foot buffer on Plan North. And like Tim said, the parking spaces up front to serve both as the handicap access and to serve the sales office there. On the landscaping, I think I understand your comments there. Just beef up that front part, some native species. On the evergreens, you're saying you want those kind of staggered, 6 feet on center?
Minimally, yeah.
I think from an overall picture, that covers it, but if you got any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Are you sodding the pond banks?
Pond banks, we can certainly incorporate that in plans.
Okay. Can you roll through the photos just a little bit so we can talk site context or context on this? Tim will scroll through them.
So that's standing on site right there, looking across the street towards, there's some kind of mixed use developments through there. That is the Plan North, northwestern property corner there that we're looking from on that second photo. And then that's kind of the same point where we're standing. One's pointed directly across and the adjacent development. So we're going to be lining up our drive aisle. And there's an existing curb cut on Paradise Point there. That is looking at the adjacent property to Plant South. Again, if you look kind of where that dense brush is, that's where we have that steep grade drop. We'll be utilizing a bit of retaining wall there. Over towards the steps if you're looking at the site plan. Again, this is Plan South, just kind of illustrating the existing condition of that steep drop off there. It's in pretty poor condition right now. So we'll be cleaning that up in conjunction with the adjacent owner and utilizing a retaining wall to try to prevent that erosion in the future. These are just two more shots of that existing condition there. Again, our goal to work with that adjacent property owner to get that cleaned up and have our retaining wall.
Do you all have any issues with any of the site plan related items? Okay, we can move on. I appreciate that. We can move on to architecture. Is your architect here?
The architect's not here. So I'm not gonna be able to speak a whole lot towards the architecture, but I can certainly relay any comments or concerns.
Did he or she kind of give you any talking points or why they were inspired to do the building the way they did it?
I think based on the conceptual DRB, we took those comments there, and I know they were wanting to see some different colors to better suit the area. So I think the main thing we were looking at now was the configuration of the windows and also the new color scheme.
All right, Greg or Mr. Carpus, do you want to get us started on any architectural comments? Or relay the previous conversation? I wasn't here for that meeting.
Can you see the other elevations? Do you have any kind of paint selections listed? I know we're early on here. Yeah, for preliminary, but I'm just wondering if the rendering is. I'm actually hoping it's not accurate.
Yeah.
It's
Doesn't look like there's a color list or specific materials called out in this. I didn't see one when I was doing it initially.
Yeah, I do not believe the color cards are included yet.
that's
What is that yellow material?
Is that stuck up?
Metal panel?
Metal panel, I believe.
Vertical corrugated metal panel. Looks horizontal.
So what is the bottom of wainscot? The gray wainscot below the vertical metal panel, what is that?
That's gonna be a masonry material there.
And that existing building on the top right of the screen, that's the used to be a lighting place or something. Maybe it still is. Is that what I'm seeing there? Thought I saw it in one of the pictures. Yeah. Yeah, it's the middle bottom. Is that building in the middle bottom? The one, are you directly behind that building
Yes, that's the one that's up that.
on the ridge there?
That's correct.
So that's the old Charleston Lighting Building?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I see it. We built that. I know that.
I don't think that rendering of it is really very accurate on the top of the screen.
No, I mean, you kind of have to guess at some of the intent, but it looks like based on the rendering that. First off, it's kind of difficult to really assess without a solid explanation of what's going on, but it looks like the intent is to blend in a little bit. The colors are similar, while the colors of the adjacent building and the rendering aren't really accurate based on the pictures. So that kind of makes me wonder what's going to be accurate with the new building. the front of the new building is a lot better than it was last time it was presented. I like the change in materials and trying to make it a little bit more contextual. It's hard to really see too much about the rest, but I appreciate the effort of the architect to kind of blend it in a little bit. I'm just wondering how much it really is going to blend in if we're not really looking at an accurate rendering. That's where I am right now. I'm not sure.
I think you're at a disadvantage because the architect's not here. So it's, yeah, so it's hard to understand. And I think the drawings are a little preliminary. More so than would be appropriate for a preliminary submittal. So it's really hard for me to endorse it moving forward without more information. That's just me. Tim, could we scroll down another to the architectural elevations? I think the best we can do is talk about height and massing and maybe some general materials. Although not presented, we can tell them what they should be. Or what would be kind of have looked favorably upon in the past. That may be the approach we need to take.
I think the north elevation is a decent elevation. The other three elevations need to come in line with it because they're going to be visible from every place. It's not going to be invisible. I'd hate to be the people living behind this mass because they're going to be pretty close to it. Residents.
Again, I don't think you remember everything we discussed. I think they permanently disabled. Prior meeting.
Just push the button, make sure the green light's on.
To follow up on Bill's question or comment, I remember we specifically talked about the concern of the massing relative to the proximity to Bacon's Bridge and the neighbors. And I think there was a comment made that it's going to be fine. It's not that big. And I was kind of expecting or assuming you would come back with some validation that this height of this in relation to Bacon's Bridge and the neighbors was appropriate. 4-story seems pretty tall to me. And I think there are sites where a 4-story building would be fine. But I think the burden is on the applicant to show that a 4-story building is not overwhelming on this property. And I can't tell from what's presented if it's overwhelming or not.
What's the best way for us to illustrate that to you that I can relate to the architect, maybe some sort of rendering?
Well, in the old days, we used to do physical models. I guess that's kind of, people snicker at that and still now because they have all this technology. But, you know, when you have those 10 photos up front, if you could accurately draw the massing in on those, I think that would give us some sense. And I would add to those photos, what can you see from Bacon's Bridge? So there's two stakeholders. I think it's all of us who drive on Bacon's Bridge. And then the other stakeholders are the people that actually get off of Bacon's Bridge onto, is it Paradise?
Paradise Point, correct.
And what is their, how does this impact their investment, whether they're renter, owner, or whatever, so that you're not really changing the character of our experiences.
Well, the building's 45 feet tall or 51 feet.
51, it's pretty
So
tall.
being
for
51 feet, that's pretty tall.
Tall.
That's basically a 5-story building. It could be.
How tall is the Charleston lighting?
Charleston Lighting Building is about maybe 30.
It's 3 stories.
It's 2 stories, right?
It's just 1 story,
Oh, it's just
but
one.
it's a tall 1 story. It's about 30 some odd feet.
I think we also mentioned the shape of the building before. It doesn't look to me to be a building design. It's more of what's the biggest thing I can put on the site. There's no real explanation for the kink in the back or the odd angles other than I want to build as much space as I possibly can. Which is not always conducive to a good investment in our town. The exterior stairs, I just think are odd.
Sorry, I missed that.
They're odd. It's very odd to have exterior stairs that are visible to the public. Now, in these older buildings, you might find them out back as a second exit. But to have both of your stairs expressed on the outside is just, it's like, okay, I guess maybe you're saving more, maybe it's more rental space inside or something. I don't know. Just, I don't see that as helping the building design. Is that supposed to help the building look better? Or is it really, again, just trying to maximize your?
It just saves space, because the elevator banks are back there,
Right.
and the loading area is exterior to that. So you got access to the elevators. Obviously, you don't want to use the stairs to carry your junk all the way up 41 feet.
But I said,
But use the elevators, but you gotta have a fire escape too, and you got another set of stairs that's enclosed on the other side for fire code. So, you know, you gotta have the stairs either inside or out, but it's fire code, you gotta have. both
sure,
sets.
I understand that portion. I'm just asking, is that helping us? Is it helping the town? Is it helping our community? Is it helping the appearance of this building? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's helping or hurting. On the outside, you know, some people might like it. I just like, to me, not like, is there a functional reason for those windows? Let's look at the floor plan.
Pardon?
Can we go back to the floor plan? So the office looks like it could benefit from windows. Is that office on every floor?
Just the first floor, correct?
So what's on the second floor?
That'll just be converted into units. It'll be units. at the
Yeah,
top,
so those are like fake windows.
Basically just provides some light.
And, you know, we talk a lot about trying to be honest and authentic and not Disney World or trying to be something you're not. We should say, this is who I am. And you know, if you gotta put a bunch of fake stuff on it, I think it may point to just a general problem with the building design.
An architectural recommendation, I think that could be passed along. It would probably help the elevations, certainly. Plan east. Yeah, we'll go back to the plan for a sec. I know that it's filling out the site, and I always appreciate, you know, using the site best way you can, but maybe taking those angles off, making all the corners orthogonal. So on the bottom of this plan, it would cut back where that kind of 30-degree angle, I don't know what degree it is, but cut that back to the hallway and square off that end and square off the front. I understand that it's saying, you know, you'd lose space in the building, but I think that some modifications to the plan will help develop the elevations a little bit better, and it'll break up some of the massing too.
I think what we're saying is the building needs to be restudied. You know, the potentially footprint, elevations, it's really, really helpful if the architect were here next time. It's not required, but it helps. Have defensible positions on why things were done a certain way. You know, if you can defend why the windows are there. I don't think anyone's saying you can't have windows, but just be able to defend it or say, yeah, we want the light in those spaces and for these reasons. So I know I've given you a lot of feedback. Hope that's helpful. Just a couple of things on the site it's clear. It's like, well, let's just maximize the site and push everything as far as we can. understand that strategy. But some of it has to be defendable, like, okay, we've got a 5-foot buffer instead of an 8-foot. Well, why? You know, why is that reduced? So I'm not inclined to just kind of give blanket variances unless there's a hardship or just a really good reason on why some of these things would happen. So I'm not really in support of some of those requests that were made as far as reductions go. You know, and the next time I'll be open-minded to it, but there just has to be a really good reason. You know, so are there any other comments? Okay. They're asking for preliminary approval, so would someone like to make a motion?
Motion for denial of preliminary. approval.
Second.
Second, any further comments? Any comments from y'all before we vote, or any questions on anything?
I don't think so. I appreciate y'all's input and I'll relay that to the architect.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next is 602 North Main Street.
The third item under old business is a request for final approval of a proposed addition and site work at 602 North Main Street. The property zoned UCMX, Urban Corridor Mixed Use, and this project was denied final approval at our July meeting. The following are staff's comments. The site is currently Germain Dermatology. The proposal consists of the 1,500 square foot expansion on the south side of the building. The applicant has addressed that setback, which is 5 feet 10 inches from the property line, which was questioned at the last meeting. That does meet our requirements. This will close the one-way drive that's currently around that south side of the building. And this results in the removal of parking on the main drive to allow for two-way traffic. The dumpster enclosure is moved to allow for better circulation and the addition of landscaped island next to the row of parking spaces. Landscape changes have been made to the proposed plan per staff's comments. And the exterior is to be finished with horizontal hardy plank siding. So I will turn it over to the architect. I think the board was okay with the site in general at the last couple of meetings.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. Good opportunity again. Bob McBride, with Bob McBride Architect. Just to address the siting a little bit, we did shift the proposed addition backwards a little bit so as to help resolve some of the architectural issues that came up. I believe the discussion really had to do with the intersection of the roof line and the existing proposed. And so by pushing the massing backwards, we removed a small interior office, but really didn't lose much programmatically on the inside, maintaining the kind of traditional medical suites that we're looking for in the nursing stations. And it allows for more or less the continuation of that existing flat facade. So while I'm not saying that this is a beautiful of all beautiful additions, I am really trying to maintain what the building looks like to the biggest extent possible. So there is the kind of small, what would you call it? Almost like a, sorry, the term's blanking on me, but the description of the one-story existing building with then the kind of faux mansard flat addition to the side, just kind of extending that, maybe trying to decorate it a little bit more with the new windows, bring a little bit more continuity to it by extending. If you can go to the elevations, Tim, please, or maybe that perspective even on 601. 602, 601, I think shows it well. Go down 3. But the idea of, yeah, so just the front facade and then continuing those windows down on the side facade. So if you go to the perspective, 2 more, 3 more. 1 after that, that's the existing. And then these are the proposed renderings. So you can kind of get that glancing view of how the addition wraps around, trying to just address that mansard, which I think is awful. It's like a Pizza Hut or something like that, and just decorating it so that at least more or less the massing is simplified. It's the intersection of one small building with another kind of simple volume, as opposed to the three geometries that are in the existing. I brought some color samples of what I'm proposing, if that's helpful to review. But I hope that by simplifying it, we address the concerns that you all had last time. Appreciate that.
Yeah, the only thing I disagree with is I think it really is a good addition. I think you should be very proud of yourself and your client should be thrilled. It's a really nice project. It was not an easy thing to fix and add on to, and I think you did a really, really good job in making the building look good.
That's good. Can we see your colors?
Yes. That's my closest guess is that the existing was the kind of, I think there was some discussion as to what that green was. Liking it, which I think we then said if we wanted to offset it with the kind of the darker green to go with it, so it's not to accentuate the kind of minty green all around. And then I'm proposing this as the green white trim color, just going to unify all of that. So softening the white in there. Green.
Yeah.
I mean, they give it in person.
Complementary other-
You don't think the existing is darker than
It might be a little bit darker,
Yeah.
but I think these photos are also really
the
dark.
light that's in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think the are you using some sort of lap siding for the addition?
I was proposing white plank glass.
Okay, yeah, my only concern is, you know, is the green too vibrant? And could that be? I think with the shadow lines on the rendering, that tones this look way down. And I just want to make sure we get the look of the rendering and this isn't too bright. So depending on,
You want a little bit darker?
not darker, just less, maybe with a little gray added into it, so it's not quite so. Because what we were talking about last time is to really, the old building is really the front building. I really like, it's like a little cottage. That should be the one that's fun and light and vibrant. And then the color for the back piece should just help the building recede and pop out the entrance part, the older part. And all I'm concerned is that too bright? But you can play with that, see what it looks like, maybe paint a little bit before you paint the whole thing and then say, oh, I wish it were a little darker. But the rendering's beautiful. If you can match that, it's gonna be great.
So it includes the roof on it. Also.
Yeah.
Mhm, it does.
Yeah, it looks
Right.
great.
I think that would be, my comment would be that you've made the existing building better by adding on the way you did, and I know that you've been did before us a few times, but every time it's gotten better. And
Sure.
This is great, and if the color stays like those, I think it'd be fine, but a little grayer probably would soften it up a little.
I agree.
Let's entertain a motion to requesting a final approval.
I'll make a motion for final approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Next is Corey Boulevard offices, proposed car wash conversion at 100 Corey Boulevard. And if you could roll through the comments, please.
The fourth item is, as was said, a request for preliminary approval of a proposed car wash conversion to office/warehouse space. Property is zone GB general business, and this was denied preliminary approval at our June meeting. The existing pavement to be removed and replaced expands for the available parking. Existing paving in the right of way is to be removed and replaced with sidewalk. Some tree removal is proposed, which will require tree removal permit. Proposed office space to be added on the Corey Boulevard side with existing bays acting as storage space. The new layout puts the added office additions at 0 setback on the Quarry Boulevard frontage. The required setback on that side is equal to the buffer. The required buffer would be 5 feet, but this can be reduced by the board. 7 parking spaces are proposed to be added. An encroachment into the required 30-foot buffer by the parking will require DRB approval as well. The remaining existing vegetation must be field verified by town staff that it meets the buffer planting requirements in to the rear for the multifamily. Additionally, the drive aisle side must also have a buffer, and that must be approved by the DRB. The proposed architecture reuses existing metal roof, the addition of hardy siding and a brick veneer. Window details must have header and sill detail per section 4.5.2. So I will scroll down to the site plan here and hand it over to the applicant.
My name's Corey Stillings, I'm with Live Oak Consultants. We were one of the civil engineers on the project. Since we first came here, not much has changed site plan wise, the exception of the proposed office spaces up front. They've been reoriented per comments from our last meeting. Some of the sidewalks have been reworked as well as landscaping. Other than that, everything else stayed the same.
Could you give us, sorry to interrupt, could you give us context of what is in the neighborhood, what's around you?
Right.
Did you provide photos? I don't recall.
Yep, so this is at the intersection of Boone Hill Road and Quarry Woods Boulevard, right in front of the Quarry Woods subdivision. On the other side of Quarry Boulevard is a gas station and a few little stores. On the back side is just a vacant lot right now, currently wooded. Like I said, and this is existing car wash, just gonna pretty much enclose it, dress it up, cut out some of the pavement to give a more defined entrance to it. Currently the pavement spans pretty much the whole frontage of it, be able to access the car wash, so we wanna take that out, add sidewalk, give a defined drive aisle. The small site, less than half an acre, I believe, only the 1/3 acre of disturbance, so we're not proposing any detention. We're just gonna be utilizing existing flow patterns.
I'm Robert Gerber with GJS Architecture. I don't know if we could maybe go to a couple of the architectural drawings, would be great. As Corey said, obviously this is an existing car wash that we believe was built in the 1960s. It's outlived its useful life, and so the intent is to create an office warehouse facility using the car wash bays generally as warehouse areas, and then utilizing offices up front and using dressed up architecturally shipping containers to create those offices for those basically using again shipping containers. And the exterior we would address in using, it said cementitious siding, but we're not showing any cementitious siding. We're showing brick veneer, horizontal and vertical metal siding, aluminum storefronts, and then new metal coping on the main street side, which would be stepped up in the general area of the offices, just to create a higher viewpoint of that area. The intent would be is to also use similar materials on the sides, so you have a uniform structure. With the exterior and the back having personal doors, as well as overhead doors to allow access into the warehouse areas.
If I could ask, do you have specific precedents or design inspiration? I mean, are you going for like this kind of industrial warehouse look, or what's the?
Industrial. Obviously, it's a very tight site, a building that needs a lot of TLC. So we were moving more toward the contemporary industrial using horizontal and vertical sidings. Using the top part with corrugated siding and then brick veneer basically as an accent, just to help with the aesthetics of the building. And then using aluminum storefront windows, aluminum storefront entrances into each of the offices. So the intent, to answer your question, would be a contemporary industrial.
Thank you.
I think on the backside, Robert, you might. Hollow metal doors rather than flat.
We're showing hollow metal on the backside with, yeah, that'd be hollow galvanized doors and frames, solid doors, yes, sir. Yeah, the only doors that would have glass in them would be the ones that go into the offices. The center area is a core area, restrooms, et cetera. It would also have a hollow metal door and frame without a glass in it. Mhm. We commend the owner on basically trying to take an existing building and attempt to reutilize it and refunction it. We think the purpose works really well. The shipping containers we've done on multiple projects work out exceptionally well, actually built here in a company locally. And self-contained offices, heating and cooling, basically large open offices that would then allow access into the warehouse areas. The AC units would probably be mini splits and basically tucked on the sides. We're still working out those locations. One mini split would be more than adequate to handle the small office areas. We have not got to the point of doing the three-dimensional or colored renderings yet. That would be one of the next steps that we would do.
Can you go back to the site plan? And I understand what you're saying about the okay, so that that backspace is just to pull in and out of the warehouses. Because my first thought when Tim was mentioning, are they tight on setbacks on the front, did you say?
The front of the building, which is facing Boone Hill, they meet the required minimum 10 foot.
Yeah.
These on the side would typically be 5 feet, which is our minimum buffer depth. They're currently shown at 0.
Yeah.
For the two offices that are perpendicular. The board does have the authority to reduce the required buffer on the sides if they feel that the intent of the ordinance is being met. So in this particular instance, if they were at 0 on the front, they'd need a variance from the BZA. But because it's a side, we can approve that reduction here at the DRB.
And does anybody live on the left?
That's a gas
No,
station
that's
and,
directly across. That's the
and
gas station.
shops and
What
whatnot
about
over
if you
here.
kept going down to the left on Corey Boulevard?
This
What's
is
down there?
multifamily residential. These are apartments behind.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is I've driven by there 1,000 times. I've never turned on Corey. Is this facade, helping improve their experience when they come and go every day? And that's really hard to tell from the drawings you've provided. I think some shipping containers are pretty interesting. And then some kind of fall flat. But those containers are going to have a huge impact on what that looks like when you're coming. I drive home this way, so every day I drive home, I'm going to be seeing that thing. And I think it's good you're trying to reuse the car wash. But there's not enough here to kind of tell. is this really an improvement to the Central Ave? And somebody said Boone Hill. This is on Central, isn't it?
Nope. Spoon Hill.
Boone Hill. Okay, that's right. Okay.
We feel based
Yep.
upon the character that's currently there, this is definitely an improvement for the community. And the use of the field.
And it might be, it's just you haven't provided drawings, enough drawings to tell that, at least for me. I mean, I can't tell from that elevation if it's gonna be helpful or not.
Huge improvement. Used to be my old car wash. I used to wash the car. That's what the windows is back.
On that note, I think it would be a great improvement to it. The shipping container, I can see you talking about needing an explanation for reduction of variance. I would kind of lean towards being okay with them being up on the sidewalk like that because of the repurposing of the shipping container.
What if orange shipping?
What if it weren't a shipping container? I mean, it's not, it doesn't bother me. I do like it's the last iteration had the angled shipping container, right? I like the change. So, but what I would say is, I would be inclined to give a preliminary approval, and then with the next presentation, we'll really look at the details of the brick and something in color, obviously, and maybe an angle from if we're thinking about the Corey Woods side and the Boone Hill side, something kind of looking at those and but it is an improvement over what's there. So I don't have a problem with that.
And we'd be more, we're doing things in Revit, so to create the 3D render you were talking about, once we look at the final materials and details, the renderings can come in really quickly. We can create a variety of sketches showing what it would look like from multiple perspectives. Actually 9 by 9 by 20.
It's hard for me to understand the justification of the industrial look. I agree that's probably a great improvement of what's there now. But if this were, I'm not sure that context and improving that is good enough for that area, because if this were a blank lot, I don't think we would approve. If this were a blank lot with nothing on it, I don't think we would approve this building as it is. So to me, that's the standard that needs to be set. Is this good enough as if it were kind of built from scratch? I need to understand the context more, and I'll do my part to go look at that a little bit more and understand it. But I think the part of the application for design review is to show contextual photos. So that would help a lot. So when you come back, I think we need to see those contextual photos. Maybe needs to be on a photo aerial so we can understand context. And I think you just need to make the case of why this is the right solution. And I think it has to go beyond, well, it's better than it was. That's just for me. Bill's much more familiar with it than I am. So for me, it's leaning towards no. And I'm not convinced that shipping containers are the way to go. They may be. Again, I'll be open-minded about it. And I have concern about we're not necessarily completing the street, especially with bringing the building all the way up to the sidewalk. I mean, I understand why, because that's the size of a shipping container. But if it weren't a shipping container, it'd be a different solution. I think the The windows, to me, are not typically what's approved by the board because it's just a square cutout. As opposed to having mullions and kind of looking like a small southern town. So those are my concerns. There's 5 or 6 people on board, so I think it'll move forward. It's just, I have some reservations about it. Mostly related to context and if that solution is the correct solution. Hope that helps.
Hey, can I speak first? I'm Gary Lee, the owner,
Sure.
and it's a nice one. I've had it now like 12 years. I had a partner, I had to get rid of him. So I'm trying to improve it. First meeting was canceled because we didn't have enough people. Second one, we got bumped all the way back, had to sit extra. I just want to get something done that's going to really make the town proud. Okay. The idea behind it, we went to 4 offices. I like that when I heard that last time instead of 6. The idea behind it is the guy that's built his garage. He's a plumber, he's an electrician, he's a real estate guy. He needs an office and a little warehouse to put it up. They're being built everywhere. I just had to move my own warehouse and wish I had more of these. So that's our concept, and that's what Robert and that's what we've been talking about trying to get to. We just need to get y'all to say exactly what you'd like. If we want the containers gone, we'll take them out. But I'm wasted. I drive all the way from James Island to get here. Traffic's a bear. I don't like coming up here. I want to improve this and make it pretty. I'm tired of seeing drug dealers, cops calling them guns, needles, people just trashing the place. And I have to be, either me and my workers are out there all the time cleaning them up. It would really be nice to move forward and get this thing project on the way. I'm ready. And either that, or I'll just close and walk away and say, hey, it's paid for and I won't need to come back. Thank you.
I mean, we don't want you to, to give up. You're putting a lot of an investment in here. And it's really just saying, whatever that dollar amount is, let's use it wisely. And so that it does, contribute to the overall fabric of town. And I do believe that anything would be better than what's there. But if you're gonna spend all this money, let's use it as wisely as we can. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is an important thing is who the target market is. And that how can you, how does that get expressed in the architecture? When I looked, if you hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have known this is where you're, what it is and how can you leverage that based on your target market to make it look like that type of, you mentioned plumber, electrician, did you, or some, small business person that's needs a place to store the materials and do paperwork occasionally during the day. I tending to think align with Chris Carpus when he said that, let's see what the next step looks like. And let's make sure it really, can be that. There's not a lot of space for planting on the site plan either, is there? Because that's the other thing that would help tremendously.
There's the ditch and and it's off, the ditch has been mowed and I apologize. We can get out.
Well, I was more thinking about this, the other, the front, not the end it faces Main Street. That, I don't see that as the front. I see the front is what you're perceiving when you're going west on Main
It's
Street.
all asphalt.
Right, is there any opportunity for planting in there? Along the front, what I call the front? Plan south on this drawing.
Yes, we dug out some asphalt and dressed it in front. We already talked about putting a sidewalk there.
Well, in between the sidewalk and the building and kind of in between the shipping containers, that space in there, I think would benefit the process and the building a lot to soften that up. And it would really, really help.
You can see here, this is
Like
what
the
I
landscape plan.
And what is,
Idea, on doing the screen, that back drive with hedges, continuous, have some shrubbery and trees. on the front side for that sidewalk and then bathroom, we'll line that with shrubbery trees as well. On set foundation planning for camp.
And what are RI? What is that?
Indian hawthorn.
So how big does that get?
About 5. I mean, we can trim them down, but
There's no way to get some trees in there?
there are trees. There's also,
There's also overhead power lines. So anything that would be along the front there on Boone Hill should be planted as a smaller material so that as it matures, it doesn't go up into the lines and then get a Dominion haircut.
No, I understand. I just don't think I don't think the Boone Hill Road facade is as significant as the one that faces westbound traffic on Boone Hill. That I think is where most people perceive that building. And that's the facade where if it's possible to get some kind of trees in, soften the building facade, I think it would be helpful. Maybe not on day one, but 5 or 10 years down the road, if you had a good plant in those, what I'll call the courtyards, the areas between the sidewalk and the trailers, you know, that's a potential opportunity to soften that look.
No landscape.
I understand that.
Oh, it's on the road.
The entrance off the side road or front road, so that right now it's all fine space over there.
I know. I drive by it a lot, even though I thought it was central. I still drive by it a lot. I guess I need to pay attention on what road I'm on.
Well, you've got a lot of landscaping in there. I don't know what it is because I can't read the chart, but you got a ton of landscape.
It's really not drawn to scale. That's not helping.
So anyhow,
The trees are drawn.
I think you've answered that question. You got landscape and you got trees, you got shrubs.
on the back and on the left side, I mean, we're trying to keep as much of this thing that's there now, so I mean, those are all mature trees.
All right, Chris, do you want to continue what you started to with the motion? Because I think you're on the right track.
Well, actually, I go to the plan again for a sec.
The elevations.
No, the plan,
the
just,
Architectural.
no, yeah, the architect. Okay. Feel like we're accentuating that middle entrance with canopy, and canopy's there, right? And putting a sidewalk to a storage room. Why not just put a stoop there, you know, pad outside the door and break all that up and kind of unify it all with landscaping rather than divide it with the canopy that's there and a sidewalk, because the sidewalk really doesn't go anywhere.
Well, everybody that's a tenant has to use these bathrooms. That's those are bathrooms for all.
Sure.
They're not going to the mop sink. That's just the mop
Not
sink.
going to-
The mop sink.
Add the bathroom.
Yeah, there's a door here.
Oh, it's internal.
So they need protection to get in and out of the door.
Which could be accomplished by not accentuating that center area. I don't know, I just feel like.
We
it's-
want to keep it open, I'll be honest, got a lot of issues over there, putting a lot of landscape, there'd be a lot of trouble. Well, a lot of people wanting to sleep it, I'm just saying, sleep in their beds, I'll be picking up more trash. The more landscape, the bring me more happiness.
I guess just the fact that we've got a sidewalk, a canopy that's, you know, and a sidewalk that's lined with plants. Like it's more of an entrance than it is. It's not the entrance to the building.
That would be for me. That's the first place I stopped.
Yeah, me too.
And we could downplay the, we can go to the site plan for some sort of landscape, and we could downplay that entrance, make the sidewalk a little smaller. And move the landscaping primarily to the entrances, which would be for the office itself instead of the restroom.
But if you made the rest of the corridor more accessible from the offices, four offices, that would make sense, because those are the people that are gonna be using, it's not, they're not public restrooms. So you don't need public access to the main sidewalk out there, you need access to your front doors of the offices.
We could address the sidewalks instead of coming off the main, to say the front sidewalk, come off the sidewalks of the offices. And address the landscaping closer to the, closer to the office entrances instead of the.
Take them left and right to the office.
I think it'd be better if you took those two trees that are on both sides of the bathroom entrance and put them up closer to the street. That would get them off your building and it would, and they would look like, no, they're new. And they would look like street trees. That would be more appropriate than putting them and get them the right scale, because they're not. So that'll read differently, but push them close to the sidewalk instead of right off the building. That'd just be a recommendation. All right, anything else we want to?
I don't think we brought everything up.
There's concerns about shrubbery. And when you mention negative on landscape, I'm thinking it's cylindrical trunk trees. Like some kind of oak or something, not something that people could hide behind. And the hawthorn, I think, is a pretty thick, dense. That may not be a good choice if you're concerned about loitering and trespassers. If we go with more a trunk of a tree, you can't really hide. Maybe in 20 years, you could hide behind a trunk, but it's gonna be a long time before somebody can hide behind the trunk of that.
Hawthorn's
That whole
Yeah.
vacant lot.
Then I wouldn't do anything that's, I wouldn't do anything that's a,
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen the trail.
right. So thinner stock plants, not the opaque hedgerow would be a better choice to address that concern.
Hawthorns have a disease and they're probably not going to live regardless. So hawthorns have a disease and they're not going to live. So they need to be switched out to something else. Recommendation. Or I think that's a tulip poplar you have. They don't do well here typically. So that probably needs to be switched out as well. Maybe an oak or something like that, not all oak or a live oak or something like that. All right, any further discussion?
Nope, it's a vote. We gotta move on.
Someone like to make a motion?
We can make a motion for approval based on the comments, with, the details and color and, everything that you would expect at a final approval on.
You're asking for preliminary.
Preliminary, what did I say?
Final.
You didn't say.
Oh,
You're asking your motion
Yeah.
for preliminary approval.
not sure back in the corner. So yeah, preliminary approval, with comment.
Including staff comments or just these comments?
Yeah.
Including staff comments.
I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm opposed. Matt's opposed.
4-2.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Next up is 212 East Second North Street.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a request for conceptual review for a proposed redevelopment of the property for a veterinary clinic. This property is zoned DMX, downtown mixed use, is located at 212 East Second North Street, which is the southwest corner of East Second North and North Gum Street. The plan proposes 11 gravel parking spaces and 2 concrete accessible spaces on site and 6 on-street parking spaces. Go. The required 8-foot landscape border is not shown on any side of the parking lot. The reduction can be approved by the DRB. The on-street parking will need encroachment permits from both DOT and the town. I did speak with the town engineering department concerning the parking in the right of way, and they are supportive of that with the appropriate encroachment permits for the parking as well as landscaping. though they doubt that the landscaping will be approved by DOT. And that was my general assessment as well. Sidewalk is being provided in the right of way, as is standard requirement, proposed landscaping. I already said that. The minimum tree planting size is 3-inch caliper. I believe it's been shown as 2.5-inch. The foundation plantings should be provided. All parking spaces must be within 60 feet of a canopy tree. Parking lot adjacent to Gum Street is required to have a 3-foot screening wall per section 8.5.2D. The proposed building meets required setbacks. DMX does not require on-site parking to be provided. The proposed building is a 1-story building that does not exceed the maximum height permitted. And the architecture includes standing seam metal roof, horizontal siding, and porches. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant to discuss the project.
Great, thank you. I'm Rush Dixon with Rush Dixon Architects, speaking on behalf of Randy Thomas of Southeastern Vet Clinics. And with me here is Jim Ducker with Bowman on the civil engineering side. We did have a list of comments from the May 26th meeting, and I don't know if our responses officially got back to everybody, but we did, from a building standpoint, we did address a few of those items. That may suffice, but what I'd like to do is maybe look at our floor plan to start with, so we can explain to you what our task was and how the program and the site itself influenced the architecture. So we were looking to provide about a 5,000 square foot vet clinic. The tenant, the owner, was interested in having an additional tenant space that could be leased out. And so we wanted to account for that. We wanted to account for him to be able to move into that space if he chose to in the future. So it became kind of that design exercise of how do we create that for him. So the site from the top to the bottom down to the corner, it's about a 24-inch drop. It's not big, but it kind of affects how you might want to create entrances. Initially we thought the corner was an obvious entrance, but realizing where the parking wanted to be on the back side, the on-site parking, we had like one opportunity to get back there. You can see the utility pole kind of made it red, and the guy wires, and then that existing live oak tree, we kind of thread the needle there, and that kind of became our boundary from where parking could happen and where the building could happen. Because of that 24-inch jump from the corner, we would need about 24 feet of ramp, not including landings. So the corner would get pretty busy. Also, there's not a lot, the best parking spots for handicap would not be at the corner. So we felt the best place is to create an entrance adjacent to the tree. It's higher in point where from handicap parking, the ramp would be much smaller because you're only going up 12 inches or so at that point. It creates a nice entrance point. You have a nice covered canopy. You have the tree. People are bringing their dogs here all day long. So it could be a nice little entry point in lots of different ways under that tree. But to address the other main elevation, we wanted to any future second tenant to have a presence on the street as well. So we kind of created, we have the primary tenant on the corner, but we kind of created a secondary elevation. If you want to go ahead and jump to the elevations. Okay, so up above is at the top is the Second Street elevation. We kind of gave the vet clinic kind of the main focus on the corner, but also gave a secondary tenant a little their own kind of independent presence. But it could also be, if they took over the entire building, it could become a front porch or be used as a second porch. it is kind of also used for the vet clinic's secondary exit in an emergency as well. So back to the Gum Street elevation, you can kind of see how we've broken down the masses to a similar size of the other houses we found in the neighborhood. And we've kind of highlighted some of those. But, just simple gable, since the last time we've minimized, we took away some materials and a few brackets and things that were a little extra. So we kind of just minimized things that way. And just subtle signage, kind of making this kind of the neighborhood vet clinic. And that was our intent with the architectural design. Any questions on that, or we can answer any civil questions?
Good explanation, Russian. Thanks for that. Can you? I think it's worth describing a little bit of the changes you made to the building. I know you took, I know there was a cupola or something. There's maybe some weather vane. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can,
Just-
we itemized what the changes were real quick, and I can just kind of point them out. We had at the gables, we actually had a board and bat, not a board and bat, but a cedar shake at the gables. We took that out and just kind of made more consistent lap siding, and that's pretty much what you saw in the neighboring houses as well. So we went in that direction. One of the closest in scale houses, if you want to jump up one page, which is the house F. That's up the street. That happens to be a corner structure as well. That's just a 2/2 window. We kind of stuck with that division for our elevations. We have the cross axial gable conditions you see there. We're not doing a front porch the way you see it there, but I think what we're doing mostly follows that. We do have some accents with the little bay windows, with a little bit of an extra roof. We're just trying to create a little more shadow line, covering glass as much as we can. But yeah, the other changes, we can go back to the elevation. Yeah, we took away the brackets, we took away a weather vane. We simplified the little panels underneath the bay windows. We just did a vertical pattern. That could just be a little V groove pattern, just to make that a little more quiet than it was before. We had these crosses in there, so we thought it'd be worth just to simplify that. Other than that, we kept the massing, height, scale, and architectural direction the same.
Thank you. Can we go ahead and discuss architecture before we move on to site on this one?
That looks good to me. I really think that's a neat part of town. And this seems to bring that part of town really into the 21st century, but making sure you're not losing that original character, the way it looks. It's pretty modest, but it's nice in a lot of ways. And I think this will help that area continue to grow and develop. I like it the simpler, although I probably would have left the weather vane just because it's a vet office and, it's just one more opportunity with the design of the weather vane to indicate this is a pet facility. If it's an office building, like my friend Will has an office around the corner, he shouldn't have a weather vane. He's a civil engineer. What are you gonna do? It doesn't make any sense for that type of, but for a vet clinic, I think as long as it wasn't too crazy a weather vane, I think that would be a nice touch and a nice detail. I appreciate your explanation of why the building is laid out, why it is the way it is based on grading. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the only thing is that I don't like, and it's just me, are parking spaces on Gum and those setbacks. I just, do you really need those? But other than that, we told you to simplify, and then I'm going to say, don't simplify too much on the eave details because, sometimes I'll see the siding just go right into the line of the fascia board. And sometimes it's nice to have just a little trim on there. And from the elevation, you can't really tell because it's in shadow, but I would say don't overly simplify. I think you've done a good job of a little more restraint, but don't go too far.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get into the detail.
Yeah.
Any other architectural comments?
I only have one comment in 37 parts. Not really, it looks good. I don't have any comments on the building, I think it looks really nice.
I think you did a good job on the presentation and that's what we're looking for in describing the whys of a project. Instead of just coming up here and go, well, we got hardy plank and we put windows and we have a roof. That doesn't tell us anything. You did a good job on explaining why you did what you did. So I appreciate that. All right, if we could move on to the site. Or like,
Everything's great. Thank you.
Before you get started, seems like there was a conflict on the lower right-hand corner with the overhead utility that we saw on the plan.
There is a power pole there on where the fence is.
Right.
There's a tree that's been approved for removal because it's in pour out.
Sure, but I was, and I could be confused with another project. It seems like there's a power pole or a line that was going over the building, or maybe the power pole is actually on your property. Nope, it's on the corner. Okay,
Right at the corner. Property lines, of course, here a little different.
Sure.
I'm kind of
sure.
picturing the fence and the power pole basically right there.
Okay,
Tree.
all right, fair enough. You want to explain what you're doing on site, or is it?
I think it's pretty simple. I think the biggest question has been parking. Since there's no requirement internally, we're trying to be realistic. And as the floor plan has kind of evolved with the number of rooms and potential doctors plus leasing, we're trying to be realistic with when you start looking at requirements. There's some requirements. If you look at other zoning scenarios, there's a whole lot of parking that you don't need, and then there's some that there's not enough. So we're trying to be realistic with the number of employees plus the turnover of the client base.
I'll go ahead and make some site comments. Looks like there's a couple of, well, the biggest one is angled parking on the streets. My recommendation is don't do anything. Leave it dirt or grass or whatever it is. You're gonna park there anyway. And that way you don't have to get an encroachment permit and you don't have to make them angled. People are gonna use them. I would encourage you to make them disappear. Just take them off. I don't think they're required by the.
Our only concern is having designated places. If this is a scenario where we're gonna park there anyway, everybody's okay with it. Because I don't like these angled things either.
Yeah.
Because the sea of asphalt goes
Right.
a lot longer.
Well, you don't ask them. I mean, they don't, the people have been parking there for 100 years. They're not gonna stop. So, yeah, I don't think they're. Sounds like we're on the same page. I don't think you need them at all. So just for consideration. Couple other things is it looks like you've got some utilities or three AC units or something in the buffer, kind of between the building and the property line. I don't think that's allowed. Are those AC units? Those are three. Yeah, I don't think that's allowed. And
I don't
then,
think that'll function for an AC.
right, because you have to be able to get to
You
it.
gotta have 3 feet clearance around.
And then what is the dark rectangle on the upper left? That's the trash cans? Okay. I think those are in the buffer as well. So check that. The first parking island on the left as you come in, looks like it's 3 or 4 feet wide. Typically that's 9 feet wide. So I think that's going to be really hard to make turn. Plus it'd be great to see a canopy tree there. And then the other thing is for discussion is there's really no foundation planting. So how is that being addressed? You know, assuming it's a no from DOT. I don't know if it will be or not, but so one of the great things about the other buildings is it's got found in the neighborhood is I think they have foundation planting. Kind of, you know, roots the building down, so to speak. Brings it down. So how is that being addressed, or do you have any thoughts on that? And then even in the rear of the parking lot doesn't allow for foundation planting between the parking lot and the building. Typically that's required. That's not being shown. So it's like the building's too big or the parking's too big or something. The site is just really being maximized, being pushed to the limits. I think to me, it's putting too much going on the site. You know, maybe you need to reduce a couple of parking places. I don't know, but I think the edges of the building need to be softened.
Giving me a new vision on the parking scenario.
Awesome. 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 All right. Well, those are just my thoughts, and take it for what it's worth. Anybody else on site?
I agree with all those comments. What's happening under the tree to remain right at the entrance? What do you see happening in that rectangular area?
Under the magnolia, it says tree.
Yes. Is that going all the way to the ground, or what's happening there?
It's basically right at grade.
Okay.
And it's kind of, I think, the way Russians designed that entrance, street like that. I think close to the not. Yeah, it's also benches or something.
What's gonna happen there is dogs are gonna poop there. I mean, it's a vet clinic. It's like, it happens before you go in, you know? Even if they go before they left. And so I think that area should be as soft and usable as possible, because people are gonna use it. Dogs can use it. Sorry. Otherwise, they're gonna go out to the boulevard, because there's really not a lot of green space, but they're gonna be looking for green space. And I mean, it's funny, but it's true that area is gonna get used for that. Anyway, that's a consideration.
Put a doggy stand, a baggy stand out there.
Nobody needs that.
Will help you. It's a little stand. Put a bag of-
Anyway, that's on top of the other comments, but I just think that that's something that you ought to consider.
So it sounds like the only big deal is the compressors, and can they really be in there? Because if they can't, that could potentially impact the footprint. So how do we clarify that?
They can be in there. I mean, if the board approves a reduction of the required 5-foot buffer there. I mean, if you say no, they're not meeting the intent of the ordinance, then no, they can't go there. But if you feel that they've met the intent elsewhere, and that is the only appropriate location for them to be located, it is a 0 setback. We don't have a prohibition for mechanical equipment to be located within required setbacks. So it's a permitted encroachment. If they can be accessed for service and meet those requirements based on other code requirements, there's nothing in the zoning that would prevent them from being located there.
So there's no buffer required along that line.
It would typically be the 5-foot, minimum 5 foot, but again,
You can't put mechanical in a buffer, can you?
but you have the authority to
Well, there's two
reduce it there.
issues. I think the
Yeah.
first question is it allowed? And it sounds like the answer is no, it's not.
Correct.
But
It's
we
not,
could,
yes.
if we want, and my concern would be with that neighbor property owner. And are they gonna be mad at us
it's parking lot there. I can't say that it's.
So it's not somebody's house.
You have to trespass to service it.
Well, it's a lot different if it's a parking lot.
It's not.
No,
It's a house.
that's not always gonna be a parking lot. That somebody's gonna see this beautiful vet clinic and they say, hey, I'm gonna put something on this parking lot. So I worry about stripping the property rights or compromising the property rights of adjacent landowners by allowing variances for things like this.
There is a screen around those units. So the neighbor won't be compromised because the screen will be between the units and the neighbor. And that's what's kind of erroneous about the drawing. It makes it look like, well, that's at least 5 feet there. So
Correct.
in 5 feet, you know, it's not enough room really to put a screen and a unit, because the unit's gonna be, if you got 5,000 square feet, that's gonna be 12, 13 tons of air conditioning. So each of those units gonna be probably 5 tons. It's probably what they'll end up being. And a 5-ton unit is gonna be close to 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet. So I don't even know if the unit would physically fit in 5 feet.
Yeah.
And,
I've been
and
thinking
still
about-
have the 3 feet that you need to work around the unit by code.
Yeah, I'm thinking of several different solutions for that. Everything
Yeah.
from creating a well on the roof where we can put mechanical units. They might go in the back. We may manipulate the size of the building. But one of my thoughts is to have maybe up to 4 ducted mini split systems where they can actually be mounted to the structure, the house itself, or the vet clinic itself. So it would only stand off of, 18 inches, and we can screen that or something like that. But that would leave it serviceable, and hopefully there's maybe a compromise we could get to allowing those to at least be mounted to the structure.
You're 5,000.
Correct.
Do you need a calculator, Bill? You got it?
That's gonna be about 13 tons there. That's too much. So,
Safe enough to say they just need to study that.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
some
it's
studies.
probably studied, it's figured
Okay.
out. And then that island beside the driveway in your parking, that island's supposed to be 9 feet wide.
Yeah.
And it's about 4 feet wide.
Yep.
It's supposed to be 5 or 9 feet. So you're getting a little bit of squeeze there.
And one couple of things I forgot to mention earlier was there's a sidewalk playing north that goes to that trash enclosure. That's really in the buffer too. That needs to come out of there. I don't think you really even need it at all. And I don't think the trash enclosure would be allowed there either, because there's supposed to be a tree at the end island too, I believe. So they're only asking for conceptual. We got a lot of comments. Anything else we need to mention?
I think the building's just too big for the site. I think it's a problem. Nice building, the building looks fantastic. The layout looks good. The only problem is it just eats up too much site. Not enough give and take for the buffers and equipment.
Yeah, I don't think it takes up too much to site. One of the things I like about that part of town is that all the buildings, they seem set far back because of the big SCDOT right of way. And so when you look at the building on the site, the legal site, it's a very tight fit. But when you look at the building on the perceived site, I think it's the right scale. It's not too big because of that big DOT right away. So there's some issues you have to work through, but I think you're on a good start, and let's see what you can do
All right,
to address the comments.
any other comments from the board?
Yeah. Regarding that parking lot, I think you're probably gonna lose the space on the bottom side of that parking lot to Plan South. And that first handicap space closest to the building, there's no way to back out of that without backing all the way down the driveway. So you probably need to lose a space up there too and slide both those handicap to the left. And that might even give you a space for your air conditioners where that first handicap space is now.
We only need one handicap space. You don't need two. Correct.
Yep.
You're way under the limit of two.
And that trash enclosure, is that a dumpster or is those rollaway cans?
Roll out.
Okay.
carts, yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I like the site. I even like how the building fits on it. It fits nice with the neighborhood.
Yeah, I do too.
We'll make it work.
All right, well, we don't make a motion on conceptual, so.
Oh.
Looking good, moving forward. Yes, sir.
Is it a dog?
Has to be a dog or
Yeah.
has to be a cat.
What?
If it's a tiger, make it huge.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Come on.
You can do a paw.
Wrong color.
Whatever you say.
Fair enough.
All right, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item up is Broadstone North Maple Street. And then I'm gonna recuse for Broadstone and also for Range Water. Mr. Carpus, you're in charge.
No, he's recusing for fives. If we can start with Tim, staff comments, please. And a yes.
The sixth item under old business is a request for preliminary approval for a new proposed 348 unit multifamily development on 23 acres. Property zone PUD planned unit development. The project is part of the Salisbury parcel on North Maple Street. This is currently undeveloped and it was last at the board for conceptual review on June 16th. The site conceptually meets requirements. The proposal includes 348 units in 14 buildings, an amenity center and 577 parking spaces for 1.66 spaces per unit ratio. A connection to the single-family townhouse development to the north is being shown on the plan as is required. The proposed landscaping takes advantage of a large quantity of existing trees on the property, incorporating them into the proposed open spaces. Site amenities include dog parks, a pool and a clubhouse, and 6.56 acres of open space. The clubhouse exterior finishes include brick veneer, board and batten, and horizontal siding and shutters. Roof materials include shingles and standing seam metal roof. The 3-story apartment buildings include the same exterior finishes. So I will scroll down to the proposed site.
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. So my name is Aaron Schmidt, with Seaman Whiteside. Been in front of you guys quite a bit recently. So I appreciate you guys hearing me out. So this project right here is yet another one from the Salisbury, the overarching Salisbury tract. This one actually sits planned south of the just formerly approved single family development that we're doing for the AMH development. So the spine road that you see here that ties into the roundabout and then swings planned north, that is what ties into the single family development. And it also ties into on the southeast side, you'll see where it ties into North Maple Drive. So you have a single lane that comes in, you have 2 lanes that go out, one that'll turn left, one that'll turn right. We kind of looked at this. We also looked at one of the comments that was made in the conceptual was, is there another development in Somerville that is similar in a kind of a drive-in to a larger development? White Gables is kind of that way. It's a single entrance, but it does have kind of like a boulevard, if you will, on the way in, and then starts to get flanked with homes and so forth. So this is kind of similar to that as far as the way the entrance interacts with the site. So this is considered a spine road. This spine road will then serve developments, the development to the north that you see here, a development to the south as well, and then tie into the single family. So with this, there has been a plan change that has happened after speaking with the town. We wanted to be very connected with the town as far as how we lay out this spine road, because eventually it will become a town road. And in speaking with them, we all kind of came to the understanding that that roundabout isn't necessarily needed. One of the things that it does is it guards the architecture of the amenity center from being seen from the road. So Tim, I think we sent it to you. It may be a little bit further down. I do have a site plan. It's not rendered, but I do have a site plan showing it just being replaced with an intersection. So with that, as he's trying to find that, this was the former Salisbury property. It is full of tree lines with fields in between that he kept his horses and whatever else in. So those prominent tree lines that have then grown up with the beautiful oaks that are within them, we tried to keep them as much as we could. And one of the prominent tree lines that you can see is where the spine road goes planned north. Just to the right of it, just to the east of it, you'll see that prominent tree line with some very large oaks in it. So we've done our best to keep just about all of those trees in there. Our LA has done a very good job of studying those just to make sure that we keep really the more beautiful ones out of anything. So with that, we've also kind of wanted to capture some cool areas where the buildings interact with one another. If you look at buildings H, I, J, and K, you can see where we've kind of created this great lawn type of area, an area where it's kind of like a meeting space for the four buildings. We'll kind of turn it into a space where they can interact, whether that's park benches or stuff like that. And our landscape architect is really keeping a finger on the pulse as far as how that interacts. Along with it, we also have what's called the exercise area. One of the cool things that the owner for this property will do is provide kind of an outdoor workspace that the community can interact with that is separated a little bit from the amenity area so that they kind of have their own space. It's outdoor. As far as the amenity goes, it's got a pool with it. There's also I'm pretty sure that there's actually a grill area as well. And then there will also be a dog wash that'll be implemented as well. So with that, actually the dog wash is right across northeast of it. Yep. And the dog park is just north of that as well. And that's one of the other things. And then the last thing that I kind of want to point out is nobody really likes to see trash implemented within the inner workings of the site. So we've kind of utilized placing it up into the northeast, and it is surrounded by both planted trees and some existing trees to kind of hide it away to some extent. Made sure that it works ADA accessibility wise as well. That's kind of the big overview from a site perspective. The only other thing is the pond. The pond is actually tied into a whole inner working stormwater wise that will then tie into Rumpsville Creek and push water downstream. So that's kind of the inner workings of the site. I'm actually, if it's all right with you guys, I'll turn it over. We'll keep rolling. We'll go right into architecture and then address everybody's comments at the end, if that's okay with the board.
No problem.
Sure. So be.
Hello, my name is Sibius Authentic. I'm with Klein Design Associates, Charlotte. So the premise behind the sort of idea conceptually, looking at place and placemaking, since adjacency to Charleston coastal area, I think primarily architectural vernacular is a very important aspect of the design process. So initially, when we're thinking about space making, place, and the idea of the connectivity between buildings, the idea of the residential realm and the idea of pedestrian and the communication between those philosophies architecturally. Yep. So these are some components, some architectural sort of language along the streetscapes, those interstitials, the idea of home and place. I think the idea of creating this community is the feeling of home and space. So looking back at these components, details, that kind of define it is obviously the relationship of buildings, but also the way that the architecture sort of defines itself in a more sort of modern modernity, but still representing the old historical component within what is Somerville and adjacency to Charleston. So the idea of the roof lines, the gables, obviously the marriage between the accents of color palette, which is very important. The Hain blue not necessarily being generally that color 100%, but representative of the duality, the light and the dark. Gable obviously being a very important prominent feature. Shutters, I think that's sort of that sort of coastal feel, the shutter also being sort of an accent element in the definition. And that realization between those interplays of detailing. This page. Yeah, this obviously this is going to be redundant because it literally is just a sort of image of the plan diagram, the adjacency of the building in relationship to the site condition. We can go to the rendered image. So this is your feel. I definitely wanted to have that sort of residential feel, and the idea of the breaking of the massings, kind of instead of it being a very sort of linear stereotomic element, it has that texture and layer. So the relationship between the dark accent colors, introducing of the Charlestonian sort of southern, Hain blue color, and then the pop of the shutter, which brings it to that sort of coastal residential feel. And then a little bit of hint of the hearth, which is very prominent element of what we consider that sort of typology and the vernacular connection. So I think that this marriage and obviously the interplay of the human condition, residential feel, everybody kind of walking around and feeling very much in place. Obviously, landscape is very important. So the articulation of how the foliage will marry into the landscape and promenade of palm trees and oaks and all those things kind of bring in that sort of visual experience, residential experience. So this will be the clubhouse. Obviously, you can see the main elevational view. Next slide. This is kind of on the approach to the processional. You definitely come in and you have that feel. So the feel of residential, vernacular. It's a placemaking kind of condition. So little hints and pieces, you see volumetrically how the language between the corbelling and the shutters and the play of the dormers and the chimney is still inherently part of the classical vernacular, but still has a sort of a modern, clean twist to it. And obviously the plan, how it's married, the hearth being the center, that's your lounge area, and then the amenity space is kind of flanked. You have the fitness, and then you have your leasing. Obviously your pool will be to the, responding to the porch. That's the more of the plan view. You can probably. So keep. Consideration of and then your shingling. And I think the big move was not to literally go to the red clay. They wanted to have a little bit of your rusticated look, so it looks slightly weathered, based on some of the cleaner moves that are on the elevation. And then obviously the relationship. which also has that continuation. So obviously space making is very important here, how people are gathering the relationship between the volumes of the buildings married together. Very simple, clean, and also utilizing that same sort of palette of light and dark accent colors. So, very, very much feels coastal. Just a hint of details, between the board and bat siding and the floor blank. Just a few, hints of color, creating that sort of duality visual experience. Obviously, space and the garden, idea of the landscape being very prominent in the film. Probably. So same thing. Obviously, how you articulate the space is very important. It's also very much part of the architecture. Big-
Modern, and then it just goes plain. I don't like it.
Well, the shutters aren't even functional. They don't even.
Well,
What is Tranquil Acres? Is that it?
That's that beautiful subdivision across the interstate on the right. No, that's Sangaree,
No,
excuse me.
no, it does look like Tranquil.
Tranquil Acres is on Miles Road. I think. Yeah.
By the
Well, it's
hospital?
not big.
Okay. And you don't have to tell everybody you're not an architect.
right.
You're,
I'm not an
I know,
architect, but I
but-
don't like it,
okay.
okay?
But if you were an architect, would you like it?
No. I
Okay.
don't like it. I'm sorry,
Um,
and I typically.
all right, I think we only were on one of the renderings for the residences, right?
I'm sorry.
We were only on the first rendering or second rendering of the residences, right?
Correct.
Go back to those.
They look better than the amenity center. But the
But they're
windows,
nothing unusual.
the windows. Look like 2/2s or 1/1s, actually, maybe double hung. The detailing, is not traditional. There's no evidence of any kind of brick for a foundation, that wall, the base. Can't see what kind of corner trim they've got. They've got very little detailing in the roof other than some corbels.
Let's back up and let you continue with the presentation. And just to kind of get the rest of the architecture discussed a little bit.
Just.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty.
All right.
When you spend like 1 minute just looking at the plan,
Right.
there's a lot to look at this week, and I don't.
It was a lot.
Mhm.
Can you explain the target, tenant, is there a target? Person who
I'll actually allow Kristen to speak to it just really quick. She represents the owner, and she can talk about just the demographic that they're targeting.
Hey, I'm Kristen Vincent. I'm with Alliance Residential. So as far as demographic, don't typically target, a certain range. Whatever time we do, it turns out to be wrong. So people like to surprise us. I'd say for our Broadstone Ingleside project, about 10 minutes south, we had a lot of industrial components, but also we have a lot of call it 25 to 35, starting a family, moving out to the suburbs. So a long way of answering, but we don't typically target, a certain group of people. We like to have enough variety that it's appealing to larger swaths of individuals. And that's usually why we offer, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. So if you're single, you can have 1 bedroom. If you want a 2 bedroom for a small family or for roommates, or if that's, you're working from home and you want that opportunity, is what we put into our program.
All right, let's go ahead and go back to the clubhouse then. The clubhouse. Greg, you want to comment on the clubhouse?
Why don't you go first and I'll have less, have a scratchy throat today, so if you can do most of the talking, I'll just fill in anything missed.
Okay. Well, I tend to agree with what Candy said on it. It's kind of broken up quite a bit. And I'm not sure that it represents Somerville. I appreciate the renderings, actually, they're quite nice. In a presentation to Somerville DRB, using Charleston coastal and showing a lot of palm trees is probably discouraged. We're not really a coastal, necessarily into coastal community. And I'm really doubting that Seaman Whiteside had palm trees like that on their plan, as they are not, from Somerville. It is very busy. I like the hearth as kind of the center of it, but it just kind of seems to dissolve from the center out. Even the shutters, I tend to like Bermuda shutters, hurricane shutters. And these couldn't be used for hurricane shutters necessarily because they wouldn't cover the windows. So it's really just for shade, which I don't really have a problem with either. But I do think it's just a little on the busy side. In that respect, though, I think the scale of it is, the massing and the scale I like. I think it doesn't, the massing doesn't kind of scream big community pool area or anything like that, which I appreciate. But the way the architecture is using different languages as you kind of scan from left to right or from the center out, there's just a lot going on there that might seems to overcomplicate it. So those are my comments on the community building. Greg?
I would agree with that. I would throw in, to me, it looks like Florida more than Somerville. And I don't know why I am coming up with that. I think in Florida, the buildings tend to go down to grade, is very common in Florida. In Somerville, I think very few of the buildings go down to grade, the wall surface. Usually there's something, some sort of base. If you go back and can we look at some of your precedents to make sure I'm just not making that up, but it's in fact more. Yes, so the walls typically don't go down all the way. There's some sort of device in there as a base. I'm not sure if it's a water table or it's just something that. And again, I see the shutters and the vegetation and the grass textures that looks like Florida. So we got to make it look like it's here. And other than that, I agree with Chris. Thank you. So I didn't have to talk so much.
Bill, you already.
I've already commented.
All right, can we go to the residential aspect of it? Right there. Candy?
I think there are parts of it that are pretty good, but basically it's a very plain design. It doesn't have a lot of detail. It's just it's not very exciting. It's better than the clubhouse, though. It doesn't look substantial. It looks plain.
I'd like to see some nice portraying.
It needs something.
Instead of-
And
instead
the
of-
windows need to have better frame around them. Maybe they need mullions or it just needs something. It's very, very plain. I mean, we've got you've got these wider windows and then you've got the narrower windows and none of it, it just doesn't go together. It needs more detail.
Okay.
The reason I asked about the demographic is that I can see the Somerville new neighborhoods going in two directions. And one would be if you're catering to somebody in my age group or somebody who's not lived in the South and they want to move to the South because I think Southern traditional architecture is really great. You know, and that's the sort of traditional look. And we've seen a lot of projects like that. The other is I think the direction you're trying to go is maybe this is a modern interpretation of the traditional residential forms. And I'm all for that in concept, but I'm not sure you've proven you've achieved that. You know, what are the essential Southern residential motifs that are incorporated here in either an abstract way, whether it's proportions, verticality, pattern of how much wall versus how much window, you know, those are all the things that create these patterns. So I think you have to pick you don't have to do anything. I would ask you to consider, you know, what is this neighborhood relative to the existing context? Are you trying to build on an old model? Are you trying to do something that's just not from here at all? Which is kind of when I look at this, I'm like, I don't dislike it. I just don't see any reference to this community. And not everything has to be a reference to the community. You can go out on your own, but if you do that, it's really got to have some meaning behind it. We don't want to look like another place. But if you can reinterpret the vocabulary and the proportions of our buildings and come up with something new that actually says, hey, this looks modern, but it really feels like Somerville, you know, I think we'd be all for that. But you got to pick a path, I think, and go down a path. And you can tell us what the path is. Don't say it has to be this path because Greg said this path. Tell us what the path is. Tell us what you're trying to accomplish and how you're going about doing that. Because when I look at the drawings, again, I like it, but I just don't think it's a good fit here. I don't.
You want to respond to the path question?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, I get that idea somehow. As far as like the color splash, the elevation on the clubhouse, I mean, even maybe centralizing it towards one element, not having it split. Guys being able to pull back and forth. So you tone out on the accent color, the cooler colors, you know, there. But as far as like breaking the base, I think that's a relevant approach to contextually think of the vernacular within the area. Doing a true traditional Southern vernacular is a dog trot, right? We don't necessarily have that here, but you know, the idea of breaking the space and the volumes is sort of a hint of that conceptually thinking. But yeah, I mean,
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think the You know, the massing, the scale looks good. I think it's in the details, the window details lack of the, you know, the metal handrail and detailing on the porches instead of a traditional southern baluster type porch and handrail. That's it.
Candy?
I'd just like to say, what I do like about this is I like the materials that you have used on the units. You've changed up the materials. And it just seems to me that what you might need, and maybe it's here and I'm just not seeing it, is more definition to the parts. So that where the one on the left, and it's the white siding, and then you've got the relief of the blue siding, if it comes out some, and I don't know if that fits in your floor plan, but that's what I mean about it just doesn't have any definition. You need some relief to those things. And that would help with the windows too, because you trim the windows out differently. So the materials appear good. It just needs some differences with the railings, with the windows, and the mix of the wide window and then the narrow window. I'm not real sure about that. That doesn't appeal to me, but it may look better. And then you really can't see those balconies back in the corner there. If they had a little bit different railing, they may show better. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I agree. I actually kind of like the cleanliness of the design. It's back, but that's probably more of the massing and that, and it does have a sense of place. I'm afraid that the place that it's kind of referencing is more south than South Carolina. It's like more Florida, and it doesn't take away from the quality of it and the design of it necessarily, but it's just not representative of Somerville. So that's where I am in the architecture. Do you need to discuss the site? If we could go to the site plan.
And if we want to cover the landscape plan as well, we can scroll through those sheets really quick if you guys would like to see those.
I think your site looks pretty good. Got some
Appreciate that.
common areas on the site.
Was it the color drawing we're gonna go back to?
So again, this rendering does a pretty good job of showing the canopy trees that'll be included as well. Obviously, we can't get into showing the shrubbery and stuff like that on this rendering, or else it would be so busy no one would be able to see anything. So, but I'm happy to hear any comments that you have site related or answer any questions that you have.
I think the site is well done, and I like the way you put the trash over away from everything.
Yes, ma'am.
I like the forethought of the dog park, the dog wash, the exercise area. Everything's placed well. It's perfect for the site.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, my only question, I agree, it's a good site plan. I like the Great Lawn. I like that no matter where you live in here, it looks like you have some decent like space between buildings and closeness to greenery. When you locate the sidewalk right on the edge of the parking, is that? I grew up in a traditional neighborhood. There was always like
5 feet of separation.
some green space between the sidewalk.
Yes,
and
or
the
like a
road.
verge.
I've never really lived in an apartment complex, so I don't know. You know, does that make sense when you have parking? Because then you have to step across a 5-foot planting area, or how does it work if it's a road versus, because all the sidewalks appear to be right on the edge of the road.
Yes, sir. So
So is that a good thing to do or not really?
it's pretty standard. One of the reasons that we don't like to do a 5-foot verge, if you have head-in parking like this, is you'll be, the front end of the car will cover a part of that verge. So that grass won't grow from that perspective. And then in between the parking spaces where the users then get out and walk across that verge to the parking lot, it just becomes dirt, especially with Centipede, which doesn't like pressure on it most often. That's one of the reasons us as Seaman Whiteside, we have a standard of a 6 foot sidewalk, especially with head-in parking, because we understand that as the car pulls in, the tires are offset from the bumper. And so you restrict some type of area that should be accessible. So we do extend our sidewalks a little bit wider, but it's pretty standard as far as our design goes, is to put it against the back of curb for those reasons.
And the dark green on this, did you say that's existing tree?
Yes, sir. The dark green that you see on here is existing trees. And then the lighter green canopies that you see are proposed canopy trees. There's a couple colors of proposed canopy trees, some smaller than others. And I'm happy to run through the landscape plans a little bit if you'd like to, or if this is good enough from y'all's perspective. I know those landscape plans can get a little busy, but you can take that up with Campo a little bit. Just kidding.
Oh, I will. Okay, I don't think we need to get in too close. I do appreciate the use of the existing trees along the spine road. I think that's good. I actually like the roundabout in a lot of ways. Now, the area immediately adjacent to the to Maple, that's not this property, or?
That is not,
Okay,
as we continue to develop the master planner or the master developer for the site plans for neighborhood commercial in that area, which is another great reason that we have the spine road here, so that we can have direct connection from this to that neighborhood commercial that these residents would then be able to enjoy. I do have one other side aspect that I would like to point out. If we look at the pond, we actually softened the slope of the pond where it does face the units. Although it shows blue, that is actually covering the whole top of pond, but rather it's the bottom line that you see is the lowest contour, which is where the water would actually sit. And the reason that we've softened those slopes is so that it is actually kind of a usable slope to the pond that people can enjoy, rather than just having a 3-to-1 right down to the water. And then you have dads with their kids struggling to fish or whatever it may be. At least this creates a usable area. And we tried to create, we did a trail around it, and then also created kind of a central area there where the pond kind of bumps out, just to create more of an open space there as well. So
I noticed that right away, and compared to some of the other similar developments in this tract, they seem to ignore the potential assets the pond has to offer. And it was pretty obvious right from the get-go that, you know, the pond could be a good spot. And if you haven't been to the pond's neighborhood down by where I live,
they did an
can-
amazing job with
Yeah.
that amphitheater.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, the pond is just as much an amenity as some of the other outdoor aspects of it. So
it has the potential. Yeah.
I agree.
So it's
okay. Well, I appreciate both of you on all three
Thank you
on
all.
the presentation. Is there any other discussion, any other comments?
Not really. I think when you come back, when the architect comes back, I would appreciate hearing, what's the vision? What's the image? Why are people really going to want to live here? What's going to make them excited? I think you can say, well, it has a nice site plan. Well, that's great. But, you know, when people it's going to take them a while to realize it's a nice site plan. The first thing they're going to see are the buildings. We want them to come in here and say, wow, I really want to live here.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, having said that, they are seeking preliminary approval. Is there a motion?
I make a motion, preliminary approval with comments, staff and board.
Okay, we have a motion for preliminary with comments, staff and board. You have a second?
I'm good with that. There's just a lot of comments.
There
And
are.
they've got to get recorded because when they come back, I'm gonna forget half of them.
primarily architectural, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you just second it? All right, a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All right, well, all in favor of preliminary approval with the motion carried or as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So 3-1, motion carries.
Did you vote no?
Yes.
I did.
Oh, you did too? All right, we have
So it
time.
doesn't carry.
It doesn't carry. I thought you said aye, sorry. All right. Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Sorry.
It's
I
okay.
should have spoken out.
So Tim, we have
I
we
just
have
think
two
we
ayes, 2 yes and 2 no.
Yeah, with a tie, it goes,
I think it goes
yeah,
to
to the opposite. So it would fail. The motion does not pass.
Well, that doesn't really mean a lot. You already
It
got
does.
the comments. You
Yeah,
can
you
come
got
back
the
and ask for
comments.
final. As long as you address the comments.
So there's an opportunity to apply for both preliminary and final. It has
Yes.
to be both though, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
There is,
Yeah.
but
And so,
let's take one step at a time.
sure.
Come back. Get the final or the preliminary. And if it's like stellar, there's that potential, but it's got to be stellar to get.
right,
Because this is a huge development.
Sure. Yes, sir.
It's huge.
We've given, people have come in for conceptual, we've given them five.
Right. Depends on the presentation, how it
Sure.
looks.
Yes, ma'am.
it's not something to plan on
No, I understand.
necessarily.
As
All right.
we've been through the process
Sure.
enough to know, I understand that there's an opportunity for it, but we definitely need to put forth quite a bit of effort in order to get there.
Sure.
So I understand where you're coming from. And just so that y'all know, we will work very closely with Tim
course.
as far as getting all of your comments and making sure that we hear those and address them. So
All right,
I
well-
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go far.
I'm actually gonna sit down for a second, but we'll have another presenter.
All right,
Now we got it.
next order of business is the first item in new business, Range Water North Maple Street. As you're coming up, Tim, you want to give us the staff comments? They're requesting conceptual review.
Yes, the first item under new business is a request for conceptual review for a proposed new 160 unit rental townhouse development on 21 acres. Property zone PUD planned unit development. This is also part of the Salisbury tract. And this is the first meeting for this particular development. The site conceptually meets requirements. The proposal includes 160 units and 31 buildings, a pool and pool building, and 481 parking spaces. Site amenities include a trail and a pool and the pedestrian connections to the other developments in the area. There are 4 acres of open space. The fire marshal does require a 20-foot drive aisle for fire protection access. This will impact the 3 units at the lower right of the plan. TIA is still required to be completed. Being a conceptual submittal, a grading plan, a utility plan, and landscape plan have not been submitted. There are 2 building types submitted, front-loaded, 3-story product, and an alley-loaded 2-story product. The 3-story drive under building is cantilevered to meet the required 5-foot garage door setback from the approved PUD. There is a mix of 5-unit and 6-unit buildings. Exterior finishes include horizontal and vertical siding as well as brick. So let's do the site. And I can turn that over to the applicant.
All right, just state your name, who you're with, and
Hi.
carry on.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Beck. I'm with Rangewater Real Estate. We're a multifamily developer. Here to present our project across the street from the last one. I'm joined by Seaman Whiteside, Vignette Architecture, and Center Park Homes. And they'll walk you through our concept, and we look forward to your feedback.
So, like I said earlier, Aaron Schmidt with the Whiteside, the civil engineer on the project. Like Matthew brought up, this site does sit directly planned south of the Alliance project that we just talked about. This is a multifamily site consisting of buildings that have 5 and 6 units within the multifamily building. It is laid out so that these buildings can be accessed primarily from an alley fed. With the exception of some that will be front loaded. I think there's approximately 5 buildings that will be front loaded. So you will see 2 different elevations from that. With that said, we have a large wetland on this site that we did not encroach into, but we do want to utilize it. We want to utilize it from a trail perspective because once again, like a pond, this too can have a great amenity aspect to a site. Especially when you can't do much within it, but if you can at least enjoy it. So we've shown some trails within there. It is, again, this is for conceptual approval, so we are looking for as much feedback as we can get from y'all. But as a site layout, it's pretty residential-esque in its layout. And then we have tucked the pond into the back and have put some trails around it as well. So that it can be enjoyed as well. So with that, I would also like to turn it over to the architect for them to speak to the architecture of the 5 and 6 units along with both elevations. Sure.
So we have the rear loaded, purpose behind that, right, is so that you don't see a bunch of cars. The experience walking through the site is a nice one. The reason for the what we're calling the front loaded is that we have a green space where sort of to the left of that pool area. There's a pretty significant green space that kind of connects all of those units. And so while it's technically front loaded because you drive in from the road, it sort of functions as a rear loaded. It's a little bit more sort of urban in nature where you walk out of your unit onto sort of an open lawn and shared area. So just wanted to add that.
And that's a great point, Matt. As far as, or Matthew, this is kind of a blow up that our landscape architect did to kind of show the interaction between the homes and how that kind of green space would happen so that they do kind of have their own private space off of the back, but also then a walking area, an area to kind of traverse the site, if you will, that is open enough to where people can walk back and forth and enjoy neighbors as they see fit. So that's, I guess that then covers the site for the most part. So, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Bill Sense. I'm with Vineyard Architecture. So we're presenting 2 townhouse designs, one being the front load and one being the alley load. One is right here, the alley load. What we want to do is try to create a community that benefits to the neighboring environment, such as the natural elements around. We think that this particular design is a unique facade and elevation where elements of brick, hardy lap siding, shutters, decorative awnings, stains, and just a variety of texture and material helps break up the general mass of the design. And with the alley bed being a majority of the perimeter of the parcel, it'll give character as it continues down further the street. The other structure is the front load. There's as the garage set back 5 feet in their requirements. Again, we're bringing in elements of more batting, hardy lap siding, bringing the additional characteristic of this shed awning roof over the windows, brackets, just to again break up the massing and think that the colors being used on a building like this, it'll also feel a little bit more broken up. Floor plan is designed to get in and out a little bit of staff, but it doesn't feel like one long entire structure. And then with the rear portion of this structure, and bring those elements that were throughout the parcel, and that part leads towards more of the community area instead of the,
All right. So, are there any additional renderings of the, there you go. Okay. Do the alley entrances face each other in the site plan? I think that's what we're asking. No,
well,
they are on the outside.
the garage portions, there are at least, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
But I think that's just for a few of them. Majority of them though, they feel kind of separated and, on their own, kind of mini plot, want to call it that. They've also been oriented, and some of them have better advantage use of pond, for example. In a primary portion of the.
Okay. All right. Let's, since you're up there, we'll start with the architecture. Bill, do you want to chime in?
I like these buildings much better. You've got 4/4 double hung windows. So you've got the traditional detail, you've got more traditional detail, the eaves. I like it better. It's built up, it's interesting. I don't know where the 5-foot setback requirement for the garage door came from. Never heard of that before.
It's in the,
That's weird as hell.
it's in the plan development, actually. We have that requirement in our zoning for,
Zoning means that you set the whole garage back 5 feet.
it would typically be applied.
This is not that kind of situation.
Unfortunately, though, because of the base zoning that was used in the Salisbury plan development, specifically, one of the sections and exceptions was that there would be a required 5-foot setback for any garage from the front facade. Now, that's normally for a single family standalone unit, but it didn't exempt townhomes from this requirement.
It's just a.
So it is a little bit strange and wouldn't typically be how we would expect this to come out, but this actually is meeting the way that that plan development was written.
Well, is it meeting the letter or the intent? You know, what's really the intent? And we're not a bunch of attorneys and CPAs saying, oh, it says this, so do, you know, saying, well,
Well, I think the intent was
What's
is
the
that
intent?
the house not look like a garage. With the garage being the dominant feature of the house, like you see all over town.
Yep.
Even now. The garage would be set back 5 feet so that you wouldn't notice it as much.
Yeah,
so that's a reasonable theory. Can you help us validate that?
But
you,
on this instance. it's
he's
not-
correct.
Okay.
You want the main facade of the house, the residential portion of the house to be the primary portion of the facade.
So just setting the
That
building.
5-foot setback is to
Project.
minimize the car aspect of it.
I understand that.
Translating to this, does it meet the intent and the letter? That's
I don't
really a
think setting the
difficult,
They meet the letter, though.
they meet the letter,
Right.
For sure.
It's a dumb ordinance in this application.
Right.
but it's not the UDO specifically. It is the plan development document. To change that, they would have to go through a major change because it was a specific,
So.
and that requires a lot
Okay.
more.
But I think it lends itself to some benefits as well. I mean, even though it's recessed, it does give it a little bit more character.
That gives you a little protection to the
then
user of the
there's
garage. You
additional
got
shade, a
side
little bit
tap
of privacy.
overhang.
Yeah, exactly.
garage door.
So you gotta make do with what you get. And I feel like you accomplish that and still maximize the best of its function and square footage.
You get in there when it's raining a whole lot easier if you can open it under.
I mean, yeah, you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, Candy?
We're on architecture
Yes.
for the unit. I think it's got beautiful relief. It's got ups and downs and I mean, it's got such interest to it, which is what what is so important in a project. The back is a little different, but it's the back. And you've got to get your rooms in there somehow, and you can't make angles every place. So I think the roof lines are great, nice peak to them. The dormers are great. The mix of brick and the materials, and very good. Some shutters, and the window grids are right on, perfect. So, thank you.
Okay, Greg?
I'm not as enthusiastic. Yeah, we don't have a good precedent for townhomes in Somerville. And so you have to come into an area and say, well, there is no precedent, and what makes sense. And when I look at this, it seems like a lot of different parts and pieces, but I don't really get it as a composition. To me, it's too much. And it's too much of things that don't really, to me, go together very well. We had another project in here where we asked them to kind of, simplify, come up with a nice composition, realizing that there may not be a good precedent. The last thing I think I'd like to see is taking a precedent from another location, like where they have townhomes, DC, Boston, San Francisco, parts of Chicago and New York. We don't want you to bring in something from somewhere else, but we want you to help us define this is what a Somerville townhouse should look like. And I think it's a big challenge.
I think your comments are heard. I agree with you on a certain level. I think maybe just simple edits, dial it back here or there, maybe perhaps is what I think you're trying to convey. But we can show, put together an example board or whatever is required to kind of create new precedent.
And then when we look at the site plan, maybe you can help me understand, because I don't really understand which is the front and which is the back and where's the traffic. If was that the last one to do architectural comments?
No, but I'll just jump in.
Okay, go ahead. No, that's it. We
Okay.
can do the site later.
All right, architecturally, to me, I think what's throwing off the elevation, I agree with Greg, is the brick. And I like the use of brick. It's just, it seems like, I'm sorry, they don't really need it, or use it more, but it's somewhere in between. And the brick, the unit right in the middle just seems so out of place for the rest of this. It would almost be better if that came off and it was the recessed area with the porch. It's just, it seems kind of out of character for this. But I also, in that sense, so in other sense, I do agree with Candy that I like the way the forms are separating and the roof line. I'm not too excited about the back, but we've talked about that. And so defining what a townhouse is in Somerville is a challenge. No. And so this one, I think the biggest issue for me is the brick, the use of brick. And it's almost like that brick center unit was there first and then everything kind of was built behind it. And that's not an insult. That's just kind of the way I feel with it. It's so out of character with it, but it's just, I think particularly the center unit can be worked on more. And once you do that, it may be that the brick is out altogether, but that's, the designer. So that's kind of where I am on the architecture. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And this is, we're not voting, it's conceptual, so it's,
Yeah.
we're just offering up what we have to say, and you can take it and kind of chew on it a little bit and come back. But let's talk about the site. We'll just start with Greg, since you're ready to go on the site.
Well, it's not a surprise to say this is a really dense development. This is a lot of density. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just really, really dense. Can we go to look at the site plan? And the other thing I want you to discuss a little bit, the prior development that we looked at, I kind of liked the, I've criticized prior projects that you drive through a parking lot as if it were a road to get to the units. And I like the prior one because you have this sort of through road, and then the parking lots sort of feed off of that, so that you can bypass all of these parking areas to get to your place, and then you turn left. And I think that's a good concept. When I look at this one, I'm feeling like the road is a parking lot and you're driving through a parking lot to get to your apartments, but maybe that's not true. And you could maybe explain how that.
So the parking, the good thing about these is that they have garages, and so the parking will actually happen in front or behind their unit, depending on if it's a front loaded or rear loaded.
Okay, can you point out some of those on the site plan? Because I'm still trying to, I think I know what you're saying. I'm just not
And
following.
I understand where you're coming from, just from the canopy trees kind of cover up the driveway within the rendering. So I understand where you're coming from. If you do look, if we start, Tim, in the bottom right, or really, that's fine.
How about the entrance?
Sure, the entrance. When you come into the entrance, if you were to, as if you were driving in, hang a left, you would turn left into a driveway there. And you would have, you'd park in your driveway, not on the street. If you did, if you continue. Those are front load there.
Those are not, those are rear loads to express.
Oh, that's right. That's
That
right.
area to the right, of those units, farmer's market.
That's right.
We
To-
wanted to make those express.
Okay, well, forget about the one-offs. Let's look at the bread and butter, the majority of these things. Are you driving, is the back elevation that we looked at prior, which nobody was thrilled about, it's real simple. Is that what you're seeing when you're driving? Okay.
They're all alley fed, so the only thing you see is the pond. You don't 25 feet from the front
Correct.
Okay, so the road's always the front, the main facade.
with the fire.
That's where the cursor's moving right now. That's the boulevard, if you will.
Right,
Um,
but the parking space is open to that side.
No.
Yeah, there you go. Right there. That's an alley.
That's
right
how you get into,
there. Correct.
okay.
Yep. Yeah, so almost all of these units have an alley that then the drive feeds to. So
Okay.
you do see the front of
Yeah,
the
that's a
building.
piece I didn't get.
Yeah,
But that's
so that big high. Say that again? Yeah. Yes, sir. So that's a,
Like areas where you're gonna lose building. You don't have enough room.
Yeah,
actually, we went back and studied that as soon as we had that conversation with the fire marshal. We went back and studied it. So we were able to shift those buildings around. We have achieved the 20 foot that's required.
Or it says 14 on this plan, it's really.
Correct. And we didn't receive that
Layout still means something.
similar. Yes, sir. And we didn't receive the 20 foot comment until after this was already submitted. But I did, that was one of the things that I was going to address as we continued was we've addressed that. Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, so talk about these, some of the units do not have an alley. Is that right? The ones in the lower central, those 4? Those don't have an alley behind them, or is it just? Okay, so. All right, what do those look like from the front, from the street? Those 4?
Yeah, what is that?
That's,
that we're looking at.
that's these,
So
okay.
There's 5 buildings, as you enter the site,
Mhm.
right-hand side, the buildings that address, the linear, parking that's kind of central to the site. Those 5 buildings do load off of the main boulevard, but they have the 5-foot recess that we were discussing earlier that those 5. That's right.
So
Those
those,
5 buildings, that's right.
so I think the facades of those 5 are really important. That's very close to your main entrance. And that has that, yeah.
Yeah, there's 5 buildings as you enter the site on the right-hand side and as you kind of round that corner, that are front loaded here looking.
Yeah.
Product that's designed specific to the site. Everything else, I think it's
Yeah.
25 buildings. Are the other product that we're looking at, that's rear load, alley bed. So you don't just, you didn't never see a garage.
But are these garages set back 5 feet
They
from
are.
exit? Yeah, it's just not a great look for your main,
We need to.
your
when you
main
get a
entrance.
3D, you'll see it, but that garage sits back.
They're the ones that gotta live with it. They're the ones.
That gives you a better
it helps. It's just,
Style garage doors, glass on.
it's just really odd to see a
Yeah, we
building. Yeah.
That'll make it look better.
Yes, a nice garage door will help. There's no question about it. It's still a very odd massing to be on the main entrance to your development.
Well, we have, if you go back to the site plan, you have these on the right, and then on the left, you have the other, so those are fed, exactly, those are fed by an alley. So it's a good, we're really doing what we can to kind of not have,
Well, you're saving green space by not having, you could get an alley.
we could, yeah, we could. but-
Squeeze an alley back there and make them all rear.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. All I'm saying is that I think the elevations of those buildings are really important. And setting the garage back puts you in it's just a bigger challenge than you should have. It's challenging enough to make that facade look good with the garage door in it. That's enough to work on. You don't have to deal with that plus pushing your whole first floor. You know, it's almost anti-townhouse. If you go and, again, I mentioned a few places where they're great townhouses. The first floor is kind of like the most important part of that townhouse because that's what that's where the pedestrian interface is.
Can the DRB grant a variance?
Well, and I think, to your point, I think the way that the intention behind the way that they function, right, is that it's more the experience fronting the green space, which is that like sort of important urban.
For the tenants. But what about it? What about the public?
And I think the alternative would be to, run an alley through the green space.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. All I'm saying is that to me is not a,
Are these rentable units? Yes, a rentable.
yeah.
There'll be some people that want that green space.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice.
I do too.
It is.
But then there's a consequence. And I think you have to look at this massing or see what you can do so that it feels more like a townhouse. Townhouse is about, let's walk down the street and.
So they'll rent the other.
No, I think,
Well,
Yeah,
but
it's not about,
it's not about rental. It's about the public forum, the public space of the development. That belongs to all of us. Public
How many
streets.
times are you gonna go in?
Well, you have to not think about, we have to look at the bigger picture. It's not you and me. But it's part of the urban
Really,
fabric.
their private business, not ours.
well, I don't think we want to go down that road. Because we're reviewing this whole project.
And everything that you would see along that public road dedicated will be the rear loaded.
And one of the things that I wanted to quickly bring up is that road that you guys saw in the previous project that passed through, had the roundabout on it and then went up Plan North. That's the road that Tim is highlighting with his
Yep.
cursor right now. That's that same spine road.
Yep.
So similar to, they will turn in where they need to, but as people traverse that road there, when they look left, they will see the front facades
Mhm.
of the alley loaded townhomes.
Yeah.
Well, we're reviewing these projects because they are in Somerville and under the review of the Design Review Board. And so personally, I'm not worried about whether or not it can be seen from the road. It's an entire project, and the front loaded buildings look like just a kind of a cheaper version of the other ones. And I think that's where we are. That's where I am. They just kind of lack the character, right? They lack the same character that the others have. And so, with that, I think that it kind of promotes a different field than the others have. And so I would say that the front loaded ones, the front elevation is more consistent. In some ways is more similar to the back of the other ones than the front of the other ones, just the simplification of it. And so adding and working with that front elevation and bringing some of the character that the other buildings have to those would make a lot of sense to me. Anyone else?
A little more design.
Yes. Bill, anything else?
Is there anything further that y'all have as far as site relation goes?
I don't.
Can you touch on sidewalks a little bit?
The
Are we-
front loaded building issue is really a site issue, just how much room you got.
Okay. And
So it's really a site issue. That, we don't need to talk about it anymore. We can just move on because
well, there is a question about the sidewalks.
Yeah, it looks like there's sidewalks in all your,
There are, and again, I know it is tough.
Do they
just
have the
based off
planting
canopy
strip?
trees. Say that again.
are they a planning strip or are they right?
They do. There's a verge on this one.
There
Yes,
you
sir.
go. So because there's no parking, you're more
Correct.
comfortable with
Yes,
the
sir.
planting strip.
And we've also included, walkways through these open spaces as well, so that people throughout the neighborhood can really enjoy all of
Yeah.
these public areas, and they connect back to the sidewalks that then front the roadways as well.
Well, it's dense, but I think that main street would be nice for a walk.
And again, I know it looks dense, and it is dense, but we really truly are trying to also focus on these open space
Yeah.
areas as well
Yeah.
and make them a very enjoyable space for this project.
Looks good.
Okay. I think that completes our comments, conceptuals, no vote. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank the board again for your time and the comments. So
A pleasure.
really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Somebody need to go to the back and wake up Mr. Campo and
yeah.
Who's coming back?
Mr. Campo. I think that would be the Barini.
This is a hell of a building.
I'm gonna go ahead.
You'll see one elevation.
All right, next order of new business is the Barnfield Horizon. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, they have,
Wake 'em up.
You guys cleared the room. I will. I wanted to make sure they were back so that they could get it all. So the second item on the under new business is a request for conceptual review for a proposed new 10,566 square foot light industrial building addition at 125 Varnfield Drive, property zone light industrial. And the addition is shown crossing an existing property line. This requires that a new plat abandoning the property line be recorded, combining the two properties. There are no other major site-related changes proposed as part of the submitted plan. Additionally, there are no building design guidelines in Chapter 4 of the UDO for industrial building.
Floor is yours.
That being said, we're basically connecting two existing buildings, both metal buildings. Those are basically being bridged. We're keeping the facade that's there already existing. We're matching that both ends of the building. Only two ends of the building will be seen. And pretty much it. It's pretty simple.
Can you address the property line?
Property line will be abandoned. That was a comment. TRC.
Right, can you go to architecture?
Well, I was just gonna, if you. Know where this site is. I just can't remember exactly. And who else lives? Reed, is this really just a light industrial park or?
Yeah, it's all light industrial.
This is Barnfield Drive. This is west of Azalea Square. It's landmark. Yeah.
Okay, can you, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I know where it is now. Thank you. Okay, what does it look like?
Existing building is a metal building with a brick front. That'd be the north building. And currently there's a tent structure that's there. Top right photo shows the tent structure.
Is that a tent? Looks like a Quonset hut.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's being removed.
Yeah.
And replaced with building.
And then you're gonna fill in.
It goes wall to wall. Yes,
Okay, let's take a look at the. Is that the 3D drawing, like a massing?
it is. Same owner of all three buildings.
So are you gonna try, are you really gonna, yeah,
Why is it on there? They're the ones, yeah, they're doing the, yes. Well, they may, at this point, they retain the due diligence, make sure they build it within their.
now my only concern is you're trying to flush out E and F and have them in the same plane. That's kind of a gambit. And you may want to consider just a slight offset so that you don't have to worry about, gee, what if the alignment isn't right? It's going to look like a mistake. It's really hard to get things to do this, and a lot of times it's better than like stagger it a little bit. You give up a couple of square feet, but
Right, well, when it's built, a couple inches looks like an accident, a foot looks like it's intentional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe a little more, but you know.
I mean, you could, they might be able to pull it off, but usually.
Any more on.
Really? Oh, well, I'm gonna send you some pictures of where they don't pull it off. I don't know. I think people tend to set back, but I'll look around.
It's not a deal breaker.
All right, you're asking for conceptual, so valid comment, just consider that. Any other architectural or site comments?
Is there any reason why you're going for concept and not preliminary or final?
They are not committed on the project until we get budget numbers, so we're just moving.
You afraid you might have to come back if they change their plan? Is that the building you're gonna build regardless, or you might have to come back with another plan?
Well, we're gonna have to abandon the lot line anyway,
Uh-huh.
so that this whole process is to identify what exactly we're gonna have to do, so that's the.
You come back next time, and ask for final.
We'll try to be first submitted.
Okay.
Not sit through this.
Don't pretend like you didn't enjoy that. We're gonna get, right, yeah.
I mean, I'm inclined to give you final right now if, I don't know how the rest of.
We
don't-
need to do
I don't think.
preliminary. We can't give final on a conceptual application.
We have.
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
Not supposed to.
None of us were here.
Well, we feel comfortable with that information. So that's.
Looks like slam dunk.
Sorry you had to wait so long for it.
Starting getting bad.
It is. Yeah, I try to skip that. Skip the line.
It'll be reflected in the minutes.
So you're Gary's son?
I am.
Damn. Congratulations, good.
We had another one on the way. We had another one that's civil.
Really?
Civil engineer.
All right, well, it's just conceptual. I think you guys know what the comments were.
Yep, right.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
Thank you.
appreciate you coming
Thank
in
you.
and
Thank
good
you
luck.
much.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, anything under miscellaneous?
It says nothing, but I did want to reiterate the email that I sent earlier today about your continuing education requirements. Minimum 3 hours per year. I believe nobody on the DRB has any, except for Bill. I'm sorry, Bill had an hour and a half.
Well,
I thought I was up to date.
Well, as of the check today, maybe I missed adding some to your
Probably did.
thing,
Probably
but,
not.
so the.
or maybe Pam missed it. I don't know.
I don't know.
But just a reminder, it is September.
We haven't been getting any opportunities for the education.
They
Now
have
we
they
gotta
not
make
been
our own
forwarded.
15 hours, I gotta do.
If you submit it, we can see what you've done and make sure that it meets the minimum requirements as established. That'll be it. And if it does, it's real easy.
So
Right,
the next one is.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second, all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.